We push to the east edge of the woods, from which we have a clear view into several parts of the burning town. The fighting noise from Soissons diminishes. Dusk spreads over the woods and valley floor. A night fog arises over the meadows and fields that separate us from the city, in which German soldiers still battle against the enemy for the right of occupation. The captain and the lieutenant come crouching to us. "Do you have a plan to get us out of this dead end?" the captain asks in complete calm. "I suggest this, Captain." After dark, we move toward the burning house to the far right. The meadows and fields in front of us can be crossed quite quickly. Then we can pass around the city as much as the terrain will allow. It is senseless to try to cross the Aisne over a bridge, since they have undoubtedly all been secured. We must cross the river by way of the open land and cannot use any roads. After that, we can find our way without much trouble. I express my point of view. "I think we will be able to do it," the captain indicates. "Pass the word to get ready," the captain orders the sergeant sitting next to him. The three of us get up and pass among the men to make it clear only weapons and ammunition can be carried, and under no circumstances are they to make any noise. A short time later, one of the sergeants takes the machine gun, and the three of us wait for the signal from the captain to move out. Silently we slide down the slope, and after half an hour reach the open meadow that stretches out before us, now covered with ground fog. Keeping in view only the burning city with the house to the right, we move through the sleeping valley floor. The rest of our comrades follow like shadows. We stumble upon a field road which heads in the general direction that we have set. Following it, we are only about a mile from the edge of the city. The slightest strange noise from the shortest distance seems to ring in our attentive ears. Without a word, we lie on the right side of the way in a potato field. The few noises behind us indicate that the rest of the group has understood. Raising my head over the potato plants, I look backward and see only the dusty, lonely road through the field. "We must stay to the right," I whisper to Hocker, lying close to me, "and continue in a southerly direction and single file." He passes my suggestion on to Briller. Straining to hear, we wait for the message to be passed on. Nothing stirs, neither in front nor in back of us. In the process of getting up, I hear clearly the voice of an American. "Shall I spray him with the machine gun?" the sergeant asks Briller. "That won't do us any good," I hiss back, "but just alarm the whole mob. Tell the sergeant," I whisper to Hocker, "that under no circumstances is he to open fire without an order." It is exactly 12:10 a.m., and I have a terrible thirst. Forcefully I suppress a sneeze. I breathe deeply through my mouth and press the air out of my lungs through my nose to get the dust from some flour out of my nostrils. For the moment I am successful. Intensively my thoughts focus on the possible situation for the enemy. Thereby I come to the conclusion that during the late evening hours the infantry with some tanks had cleaned the Germans out of the town, and that the tanks had moved on ahead. With the coming of night, the invaders will put up a circular defence around Soissons and move under cover. In that way, all the roads and streets that lead to the city will be sealed off by the opponent, and we are lying right next to an American machine gun nest. There is no other choice but to try and go around the city in a wide circle. I whisper my deliberations to Hocker, and he passes them on to Briller. Like a snake, Briller crawls toward me. Man, I have landed in an ant pile. The beasts have worked me over so much that my skin burns like I am frying in hell. He laments slowly into my ear. That won't hurt you any, old fellow. You won't get to heaven anyway. In the meantime, the ant's venom will save you from rheumatism here on earth. I console him and raise my head above the potato plants. Can you see anything? He tugs at my arm. Nothing of any importance, I respond, and lay myself flat on the earth. I have come to basically the same conclusion as you, but I do not like the direction. We know that the Americans have penetrated further south of Paris than to the north. Besides, the Tommies are holding back quite a distance in the north. That is clear to me, I answer back, but you forget that we did not have any other choice since our quarters were south of the main road. Consequently, we must try it in this direction. Good, he agrees. We can't lie here forever. Let's get going. Carefully we get up and prowl parallel to the city edge across the fields. Glancing to the right, I recognize the individual dark shadows that rise from the potato field and follow in single file until a few yards to the right, a scuffling noise is heard when two rifles collide. We throw ourselves to the earth at once. Not 20 yards ahead of us, we hear the excited voices of Americans and see a white flame rise in the sky. At nearly the same time, a machine gun barks its fire along the field road. Devoid of any common sense, the comrades break out like a herd of sheep backwards out of the potato field and seek security in insane flight. Hugging the earth, we wait until the Americans have calmed themselves. With our pistols ready to fire, we listen with every nerve for the approach of our adversaries. The hands of my illuminated wristwatch move steadily, and within half an hour nothing has occurred. Who is still here? I nudge Hocker next to me, who passes the question on to Brilla. A barely noticeable rustle, which is gone in a few seconds, gives me to understand that Brilla is going backwards to check on the number of comrades still with us. I believe they all took off, Hocker mumbles to himself. Then we are no longer responsible for them and can try to get through alone, I whisper to him and look over the top of the potato plants. After 15 minutes, Brilla snakes between us. Not one pig still here, he breathes angrily. So we were not wrong in our judgment of this miserable herd, Hocker hisses through his teeth. After a short war council, we come to the conclusion that we will try it alone and that we will keep to our intended direction. We crawl behind one another, and after 20 minutes reach the edge of the potato field, and keeping to the left make our way across a meadow until a swamp with reeds requires that we halt. Without any hurry, we look for a suitable place to overcome this obstacle, which we succeed in doing after a few minutes, but not without severely taxing the ability of my indestructible comrades to keep from laughing when a stupid accident causes my right boot to slide on a slippery spot and I end up in the water, dripping wet. I reach the opposite bank and with the help of my comrades pull off my boots in order to be rid of the stinking water. Under the amused grins of these malicious fellows, I wring out my socks and slip my boots back on. Just wait, you scoundrels! I take the wind out of their sails. Someone has prepared a surprise for you someplace. Without delaying any longer than necessary, we continue further, and after an hour come to a secondary road on which there is considerable traffic by American supply trucks. Pressed tightly against the embankment, we wait for a break in the traffic, and then with a quick jump reach the south side of the road. Continuing in a southerly direction, we steer toward a burning building far to the right. Lulled by the hope that we will be able to skirt the city without being noticed, I hear clearly the loading of a weapon. Once again we kiss France's hotly contested earth, holding to it tightly. Dark clouds have appeared in the heaven. Only a few individual stars can be seen in the firmament and keep alive in us the belief in a good outcome. Time presses. Before it is light, we must find a safe shelter. It is 2:20 a.m. as we retreat toward the west to make another circle in our third attempt to get through. At exactly 3 a.m., as we are attempting to cross the railroad track running north and south to Soissons, two machine guns open fire several yards from us to our complete surprise and force us to take cover under the howling buzz that is tearing up the meadow. Amazed and sure that we had not made any noise, we look backwards and notice a tree about 100 yards in the distance, on which the Americans must have seen our silhouettes. A short turn from Brilla's lips is enough for us to execute a 180-degree turn on our bellies, and, like serpents being pursued, slither back in a westerly direction. A new burst of adrenaline gives us a renewed shot of energy to our waning strength. We assemble behind the tree, which was the reason for the Americans' fire. Just now, when we have no possibility of finding any secure cover, it begins to rain. After a short discussion, we get up and follow behind each other further to the west. Not until we are sure that we are out of range of the American machine guns do we take cover in the underbrush. This time the devil has his dirty fingers in the game. I open our conversation. That's the way it looks, Hocker agrees, pulling a comb out of his field blouse to fix his hair. Now it is absolutely necessary that we find shelter for the day. It will be light in an hour, Brilla growls, lying on his back. Unfortunately, there is not a solitary barn or shed in this damn area, Hocker answers sullenly. In every situation, the German soldier has come out all right, I throw out, and we will find a place to camp. The best thing would be to return back to that woman. Brilla suppresses a laugh. Now I would not say no to her if afterwards she would let me sleep alone in her bed. That is not such a bad idea. Hocker reaches for this thought spoken in jest. Does that mean that we should go back that far? I object. Be calm and listen, Brilla says in a low tone. It is obvious that we will not get anywhere trying to go south. I can imagine that the road to the city, I mean the main road from the north, is the open left flank as the Americans have pushed into Soissons. If that is the case, then in the coming night we just need to find an opening to cross the road and head in the direction of Laon to connect up with the German troops. Not to detract from your idea, Brilla, but what it means is to bet everything on one card and to renounce the time we have already wasted foolishly. I mix in with my warning. Then tell us what you think we should do, Helmut, Brilla says. We cannot lose any more time. You have seen for yourselves what the Americans have rolling across the roads. It doesn't look to me like it is just a matter of the situation around Soissons. They are well informed about our troop movements. They would not shy away from pushing into an empty sector in order to secure it. We should consider whether or not we should get going and try our luck to the south, or just find shelter here in this vicinity and wait for the coming night. So, Brilla seizes the initiative. Let's look at our alternatives. Since it is now light, a march to the south is out of the question. That only leaves this piece of woods for our shelter, since with this weather we cannot camp in the open meadowlands. If there is still fighting in the city, then my viewpoint is correct, and we should try to get through to Laon. If it is quiet, then we are just as close to the northern road as the southern. As I said before, I think the northern route is better. Does anyone have a better idea? He asks, pulling in his legs in order to stand up. No. Hocker and I answer at the same time and get to our feet. As quickly as the terrain allows, we make our way to the heights of the wooded hills straight to the northwest, and after an hour we reach the southern side of the road. A convoy of trucks moves through, forcing us to take cover. Snuggled close to each other, we stretch out in the low grass and stare at the passing vehicles loaded with American infantry soldiers. It is apparently no fun for the Americans either to be driven so early in the morning in this weather toward the German weapons. Quietly they sit on the benches of the trucks as though they were animals being driven to the slaughterhouse. They would probably rather be with their wives lying in a warm nest instead of picking chestnuts out of the fire for the old Roosevelt. Hocker says out loud with sad eyes as the last truck rolls past. That is what is the most shitty in this world. I agree with him. Otherwise you did not perceive anything special about this funeral parade. Brilla notes in the early morning. What was there that was so special to be seen? I ask curiously. It was infantry, he says calmly. That's right, Brilla. I admit, and immediately it registers in my consciousness what he means. Now I nearly believe that you were right about your wedge. Then it appears that to this hour at least, they have not brought any artillery forward. I laugh with admiration at his sharp vision. That's nice of you, he continues to mock me. I did not expect that you would tune in so soon. I thought you only used your hot head to dry your hat. Ah, the old Brilla still lives. Then nothing can go wrong for us today. Hocker closes the circuit of our comradeship. Let's go, you old washwomen. Brilla laughs and gets ready to start. Like the wind, we sweep across the road and roll down into the grass. Securing all sides, we move as quickly as possible in a northwesterly direction toward the hilly section of woods from which last night we made the first attempt to break through with the miserable remainder of the battalion. In the meantime, it is now 5:15 a.m. Despite the time of day, thanks to the light rain and the thin early fog over the meadows and farmland, it is possible for us to continue our journey. But still we slowly become suspicious, because while there is the loud noise of motors to the right and left of us, to this hour not one shot has sounded in Soissons. In an area of thin scrubs and old dried-up fruit trees, about 500 yards from the ascending forest, we lie down for a council. Finally, daylight allows us to light a cigarette without danger. Given entirely to the anticipated pleasure, We open the packages with nervous fingers and shove the sticks filled with gold-yellow tobacco into our mouths. "Light?" Brilla asks in forced calmness. "Light?" I ask Hocker, and clap with both hands on my pockets without hearing the familiar rattle of matches. In shock, we look at each other. Is it possible that we have hauled 240 cigarettes around with us and no one has a match? "That is the worst that has happened to us yet," Brilla expresses, completely brought down. We put the cigarettes back into our pockets. Suddenly, and completely unexpectedly, from behind the woods the crack of artillery fire of 4 American batteries is heard, and seconds later the heavy projectiles howl above us through the rain clouds. Like steel springs from which the pressure is suddenly released, we pop to our feet and follow the flight of the shells, recognizable by the roar. Seconds later, 4 mushrooms of smoke rise toward the sky in the southeastern part of the city. "That makes me sick." Brilla shakes his head. "We could be there right now, if we had listened to you, Helmut. There are still some Germans at work, and we could have helped them." "Nonsense, Robert. When they send the next salvo into the northeast section, then you will be right again. We are not going to get any farther right now. I am in favor of getting a couple of sheaves of oats and finally going to sleep for a while." I comfort Brilla, laying my hand on his shoulder. "Why should we bring those things over here?" Hocker mumbles to himself. "It would be better to get under them where they are. The ground is certainly dry." "He is right," Brilla indicates. "They could see us carrying the bundles." "Of course," I agree, "but each one of us would have to nestle alone in one of the pyramids, and we cannot exchange any thoughts." "Let's get some sleep first," Brilla decides. "We can tell each other our dreams later on." We make our way toward the field and disappear under the stacked oat sheaves, where I immediately fall asleep sitting up. The 27th of August, 1944. It is 11:25 a.m. The rain has let up. Torn shreds of clouds hang in the sky, through which the timid rays of the sun dare to come out from time to time. On the stalks of my tiny straw hut, silver streaks of water drops run down and disappear into the earth. Little bugs are busy at my feet on the fertile field. A light vapour rises 2 feet above the earth. Life will go on, even when I am stiff and rigid under the earth. A father cannot keep his son back from war anymore, even though he breaks his heart over why he has raised him, so that when he becomes grown he must be destroyed. A young wife will cry for her mate and press tenderly to her the child who will never see its father again. No news will reach the homeland about the manner or place of my destruction. Like a dog, I will be thrown into a hole and covered by hate-filled strangers who only want to save themselves from the stink and danger of infection from the corpse. It will not be otherwise. But the will to live rises powerfully in me. Determined, I reach my hand into the holster and bring the cold, hard steel in front of my eyes. Whoever is seeking your life, I whisper inside myself, has forfeited his own. My hot blood rages in my veins and drives me to my feet. Like the shells of larvae awakened to life, the oat sheaves fall apart. Committed to act, I call to my friends to depart and go about securing all sides of the hollow. "What is going on?" both call, coming out of the oat field into the hollow. "We have finally got to do something, friends, if we don't want to be cornered by the dogs," I give in response and keep my eyes on them. "I have been observing the terrain around us," says Brilla, loaded with new energy, "and I don't think we will stumble into a trap if we can cross the 500 yards and get into the woods." "Then let's get going immediately." My impatience pushes to my lips. "What happened to you, Helmut?" asks Hocker, mistrustful. "I want to have a decision, Willie," I respond coldly. "Don't lose your nerve. One should not do anything rashly," he warns, raising his index finger. 19 hours have passed since the Americans caught up with us. You cannot talk about acting in haste. Rather, the opposite is more the case. I insist. "Don't prattle unnecessarily and stick close to my heels," Brilla demands and walks calmly out of the hollow. Obviously nervous, Hocker chews on a grass stalk as he pulls his pistol out of the holster and follows Brilla. Securing the rear, I follow last. Exactly at 2 p.m. we are sitting on the same tree trunk that Hocker collapsed on to catch his breath yesterday at 6 p.m. Now unmerciful hunger and thirst register. We have not had anything to eat or drink for 22 hours. Dull, tired, hungry, thirsty, and with soaking clothes on our bodies. The three of us sit, forsaken by God and the world, in a French forest from whose trees the water drips down our necks with the slightest breeze. Rage slowly but surely rises in us. In addition, we are surrounded by the enemy, but we still struggle to keep the vague hope that for well-trained soldiers, it will not be too difficult to get out of this encirclement. We forget that now, 1944, after more than 4 years of war, we have become weaker while the others have grown stronger. If we had only left Soissons with the SS, Hocker opens the round. If we had only gone to a respectable unit in Paris, Brilla joins in. If this shitty war had only stayed with the devil, I add my 2 cents worth. Restlessly I get up and wander in a circle around my 2 companions, whereby I stumble upon the remains of the equipment and supplies left by the men from our battalion. Out of sheer boredom, I turn over with my feet the helmets, belts and cartridge pouches, until I come to the bread sack, which I pick up and examine curiously. Well, well, I groan and pull a piece of Swiss cheese out of the bag. Sauntering toward my friends, I see their expectant faces looking at me. Then I feel something crawling on my hand holding the cheese, and I quickly look to see what is there. Angrily, I shake my hand vigorously without letting go of the cheese, and 20 ants that were hanging on it fall to the ground. The last one I brush off with a branch torn from a tree, then I hurry proudly to my companions. So, I hold the cheese in front of their hungry eyes. Isn't that something? It weighs at least 300 grams with the holes. Hocker laughs and reaches for the cheese as a red-brown ant crawls out of one of the holes. Do these beasts also eat cheese? Brilla asks, observing the animal. No, Hocker jokes in response. They don't eat it, we will. Finally, a laugh comes back to our serious faces as Hocker cuts the cheese into 3 pieces. It will give the stomach something to do. Brilla indicates, and struggling with the entire mass, shoves it into his mouth all at once. With a mighty effort, he swallows the entire gluey clod as his eyes bulge out like those of a frog. Dirt grub! He spits out as his tongue makes a half circle between his cheeks, lips and teeth, while we struggle to suppress our laughter. Don't laugh, you dirty sacks, he growls angrily. Come on, old man. I nudge him. What will the madame do when we appear? Perhaps she has something that you can wash your mouth with. You don't want to go down to the village, do you? He jumps up with a jolt. Hocker looks at me, upset. That is exactly what I want to do. At least to the edge of the village so that we can finally see what is going on there, I answer, determined. Or don't you want to go over the road toward Laon? I follow up. Of course I want to do that, but it is still daylight, Brilla counters. Then let's at least go far enough so that we can see the village and the vehicles, I demand dauntlessly. Without further dispute, we go into the underbrush so we can slip down the slope. Just as we reach a point where we can see the church and some of the roofs of the village, the bells in the village begin to clang. Loud shouts in the village streets are sure proof that Soissons is free of Germans. Liberté pour Français, bellow a pair of children's voices as the bells become silent. This time we are really in deep, Hocker mumbles angrily. Tonight we will look up the madame, Brilla says gruffly. We will learn from her where the Americans are, he adds. She will turn us in, I warn. We lie in the thick underbrush and await nightfall. Calmly and attentive to everything, we glide quietly down the rest of the hill and a little later stand in complete darkness before a high park wall that we follow to the left until it makes a right turn into the village. Carefully, we work our way to the first houses and discover double guards with long fixed bayonets on the village streets. They are French, I murmur to my comrades. Shall we try it further to the west or east? Brilla asks. Eastward, comes from our mouths at the same time. Then about face. Brilla whispers, and I am now in the lead. Quickly we make our way over the small meadow that is nestled between the village and the woods, and after 30 minutes reach the eastern limits of the village. We recognize the frame of our burned-out ammunition truck. But even there, further eastward, French men stand smoking together with weapons on their shoulders. The French are in front and in back of us. Inch by inch we make our way slowly through the meadow, then past a guard standing on the road. I do not have the slightest fear of the French, but to be in the situation with the Russians would seize me with terror. Brilla approaches me from behind. Just keep going. Robert, I will watch out for the Frenchman, I say softly in his ear. It is 1:35 a.m. when we stand up north of the railroad tracks and joyfully stride out in a northeast direction toward Laon, which lies about 25 miles in the distance. The 28th of August, 1944. For an hour and a half we march unmolested across the fields, keeping Soissons to our right so that we can cross the railroad line headed north. We later observe human shadows on the horizon above the railroad grade. They move here and there in typical American carelessness. Robbed of all hope, we let ourselves fall exhausted into the grass and stare into the heavens, from which comes no advice or means of escape. Further northward? I say without any power in my voice. It is certainly hopeless, my companions answer. Then we must try and get some civilian clothes and see if we can go on during the day, I answer. Where will you get civilian clothes? They ask. What about the Madame Brilla? I nudge him. She just wants a man in bed and not to help anyone who is trying to flee, he snaps, depressed. Then I will try it, I say, and sit upright. If one goes, we all go, they both respond. Okay, then let's go back again to the village, I say, filled with new courage, and stand up quickly. Silently, we retrace our steps. Exhausted, we stop close to one of the houses standing along the street near the main road of traffic. We fall into a thin clump of bushes and are immediately asleep. A bright day greets us as we awake. The sun burns hot in the sky. Looking toward the street, we are amazed at the convoys of Americans that roll eastward uninterrupted. How are we going to get across this road? Hocker flusters in shock. They won't be travelling forever, Brilla responds confidently. It is already 9 o'clock, I indicate with a laugh. Time does not matter anymore, Hocker reacts laconically. Brooding, we lie again on our backs and blink into the sun. About 10 o'clock, the traffic on the road suddenly stops. Not one human being is to be seen in the entire area. Let's go, men. Brilla forces a grin and stands up. Get ready to die. Hocker indicates. Boldly, we step into the road, our pistols ready. We make our way through small, unfenced gardens, across the village street unseen, and follow the park wall into the woods, where we stretch out next to a pond covered with magnificent water lilies. We are now aware of the improbability of our luck, but also the carelessness of our conduct during the entire war. Unusual situations demand unusual decisions. As we discuss whether or not to test our lucky streak by knocking on the Madame's door during the day, since it appears that the entire village is in Soissons celebrating the victory, our doom approaches in the figure of a stone-faced old Frenchman. He bends around the shrubs in front of the pond and begins in all quietness to pick the water lilies without even a glance around the area. Unable to move because the old man would notice us, we wait, hoping that he will soon disappear as quietly as he arrived. But suddenly he slides on the slick bank, falls onto his back, grabs the grass with his hands and stares directly at us. "Oh, Soldat Allemand!" he screams like he is insane, and with his last ounce of strength slides back away from the water's edge. He stares at us with open mouth and immediately screams in a shrill, crackling voice, "La guerre finie! American soldat ici! Liberté française! Soldat allemand part!" "Shut your damn mouth!" Brilla screams, going straight toward him and seizing him in his arms. Irresolutely, we stand around the old-timer who, shaking with fear, begins to scream again. "What shall we do with the old boy?" Brilla asks, puzzled. "Stick his head under the water until he becomes peaceful," Hocker says, reaching into the man's pockets and pulling out matches in his hand. Quickly, we light our cigarettes. As fast as his legs will carry him, the grandpa uses this instant to gallop back toward the village, screaming all the way. We follow him quickly and grab him by his jacket. He stops running, and whimpering, he moans. "Qu'est la guerre?" "Yes, this is war, old man," Hocker hisses at him. Undecided as to what we should do with this shaggy Frenchman, fate takes the unpleasant task out of our hands. 5 Frenchmen come toward us on a fast run, their attention having been drawn to us by the old man's screams. The 5 men hold their rifles to our breasts. "Give up," one of them calls to us in good German. "The Americans have been in Laon for some time." Slowly we lower our pistols. The spokesman comes to us walking calmly. With outstretched hand, he demands our weapons. Instead, we put the pistols back into our holsters. "We are not at war with France," I say, looking him in the eyes. Laughing, he pulls a pack of American cigarettes out of his pants pocket and hangs one between his lips in typical French style. "You are lucky," he says, still laughing and holding a burning match to his cigarette. "I was a prisoner in Germany," he begins in a calm voice, "and I cannot complain about the treatment. You could have easily fallen into the hands of some fanatics who would have shot you without mercy. You can keep your weapons if you will follow me into the village, where I will turn you over to the Americans. You are certainly part of the people who rested here a few days ago and did not cause any trouble. Give up. The war is over for you and you will see your homeland again." We look at each other. "We will not surrender to the French," I whisper to my friends, and notice that one of the riflemen has disappeared back toward the village. "Let's run into the underbrush on the left and shoot it out with these guys," Hocker murmurs through his teeth. An unrealistic situation rushes through my consciousness, and I am in doubt whether I am awake or dreaming. Unexpectedly, 4 Americans, the size of trees, appear from around the corner. Shaking with fear and excitement, they remain about 5 yards distant from us, standing with their automatic pistols pointed at us. "Hands up, boys," one of them calls, and as in a vision I see everything that is dear and precious to me, disappearing in an unending distance. The most disgraceful moment of my long life as a soldier has arrived. Here in this lousy French pen, it has come to an unworthy conclusion. "Raise your paws in a double German salute, Helmut," Briller says loudly next to me. Just now I notice that my friends are holding their open hands in front of their chests. Without direction from my absent spirit, I slowly raise my hands toward the sky. The 28th of August, 1944. The tires of the Jeep squeal sharply and raise an ugly cloud of smoke as they negotiate a left turn on the street going out of the village headed toward the main road. My 2 comrades, sitting to my right and left, clamp like iron onto my arms. No, I do not dream. I am sitting on the wide hood of an American Army Jeep between my 2 companions and travelling back along our road of retreat to where we came from. Turning myself around, I see the disapproving faces of the American soldiers and the threatening manner in which they point their pistols at us. Once again, a feeling of inner emptiness and infinite abandonment creeps over me. I try to bring some order to my thoughts while I stare at my field blouse, robbed of all decorations and badges. Where my national insignia was sewn, there is now a hole through which the white of my undershirt can be seen. On my left wrist is a band of white flesh, where a short time ago my wristwatch kept the skin from becoming tanned. Only my shaving kit remains. "Pull yourself together, Helmut," I hear Briller saying from what seems like a far distance. "Shut up!" barks an American behind us over the windshield. "Kiss my ass!" growls Briller and spits contemptuously onto the right side of the road. The motor of the Jeep hums monotonously as it distances us further from our intended goal with each passing minute. The thought comes, why didn't I put a bullet into my head? What purpose is there to living without freedom, especially now after the world in which I believed, for which I fought and bled, has collapsed? Who are these people who, like highway bandits with no feeling of shame, plunder soldiers in their most bitter hour and enrich themselves in the most base manner on the misfortune of others? What will happen to us? What must the homeland face if these Americans are successful in pushing into the Reich? Like a strong stimulant, these thoughts make the blood flow hot from my heart through the veins and create a new determination in every pore of my body. In full possession of my old spirit for life, I grab the hands of my friends and press them vigorously in the hope that they will also overcome this humiliation. A fine smile on their mask-like faces thanks me for the gesture. A warm stream of inner joy pulsates throughout me with the certainty that I do not have to carry the coming misery alone. A quiet oath seals in me my readiness to stand by them in their highest hour of need. It is true that today we have fallen into the hands of robbers, but the fair fight in Normandy brings the conclusion that not all Americans are such miserable highwaymen as these. The fact that they have a sense of humour was proven during an episode that occurred near Saint-Sauveur. At that time, some Germans fell into their hands, including an 18-year-old who had the face of a child. After a quick decision, they cut his pants off above the knee, filled his pack with chocolate, hung a sign around his neck that read, "We do not fight children," and sent him back across no man's land to his unit. It will be a hard loaf of bread that the future gives us, but the belief and hope that we will once again see our homeland shall shine for us like a star in the darkest night, and together we will endure what fate has prepared for us. The driver cuts the motor and turns left onto a field road where 15 tanks are assembled along the length of the meadow. The jeep stops by the tanks. With grinning faces, the troops pull us from the jeep. Helpless, the three of us stand in the middle of these foreign soldiers and let their mockery pass over us. The 4 rascals to whom we surrendered our weapons show the others our decorations, which they pull from their pockets. A tall American examines our medals and insignias with interest. On the sleeves of his wind jacket are 3 raised stripes and 2 lowered stripes, which indicate that he is a staff sergeant, the same rank as we. With unconcealed admiration, he walks up to us and pats us on the shoulder. "Good soldiers," he says, acknowledging us, and calls in incomprehensible English to the 4 soldiers who are busy examining the contents of our map cases. They respond by shaking their heads. Energetically, he turns from us and steps among the group of curious who are examining our equipment. A hail of words shoots from his mouth upon the soldiers, to which one replies in the same intensity and tone. We listen, surprised, to the terrible gibberish, recognizing that a fight is looming over our medals. With the painful feeling in our breasts that we are witnesses to and the cause of a strange family strife, we follow the spectacle that these farmer sons from the United States are carrying out. A pudgy older Yankee comes out from a tent situated between the tanks and goes toward the arguing soldiers. On his cap and on the corners of his shirt collar are 2 metal bars which identify him as an officer. After a few sharp words directed toward the soldiers, the rabble becomes silent. With a stone-faced expression, he now comes toward us and remains standing 3 paces away. His grey eyes wander from one to another. Taking an enormous cigar from his pouch, he shoves nearly half of it into his mouth. From the pockets of his jacket, he pulls a match in complete calmness, and then with a quick strike against the low-hanging pistol holster, lights the match. Leisurely, he guides the burning match to the cigar, and seconds later an impressive smoke cloud rings toward the sky. Staring at us with an unchanging face, he calls several men to him with a snap of the fingers. Without taking the monstrous cigar out of his mouth, he talks to the soldiers in a deep voice. Their grim faces promise nothing good for us. In the next moment, we are encircled by the Americans and feel their searching hands on all parts of our bodies. The entire contents of our pockets, including our wallets, fly before our feet. Before our eyes, strange, dirty fingers sort through our possessions and take all money and photographs with military objects from our wallets. Bitterly, I see the picture of my wife disappear into the pocket of a dirty thief. Unmoved, the officer follows the shameless activity of his subordinates. Finally, they are finished and indicate we can pick up the lamentable remains of our possessions. A small truck, built like a jeep, pulls out of the group of parked trucks with a howling engine and stops next to us. 5 heavily armed Americans help us into the vehicle. They climb into the wagon after us, and with their bodies block the open back end of the truck. Driving quickly, we travel back along the fieldway to the main road, and after 15 minutes turn left onto a small paved street and stop suddenly in front of a large farm complex. Our guards spring elegantly from the truck and indicate with spiteful gestures that we are to do the same. In stoic calmness, we leave the vehicle, unimpressed by the conduct of the Americans, and march towards 6 Frenchmen standing in front of the gate to the farmyard with German rifles and pistols in their hands. They break out in a war cry when they see us. Under the idiotic roar of these failures from 1940, we are driven through the entrance to the yard and stand next to each other with our faces toward the house wall. "Ja, do it quickly, you murderers," I think, expecting to get a bullet in the back of the neck. In seconds, my previous life passes through my consciousness, but the seemingly endless minutes pass without anything happening until an unseen man calls Brilla's name in German. "Present," I hear Brilla answer indifferently. "Come inside," the other one registers again. I glance to the left in the direction from which the voice comes. Unruffled, Brilla leaves the wall and saunters through the open door of a shed toward a standing American. Almost politely, the man leads him in through the door. "They are going to interrogate us," I whisper softly to Hocker, and as a consequence I receive a hard, painful blow to my right kidney, which takes my breath away and immediately silences me. Calmly and ready to meet with dignity whatever comes, I glue my hands to the wall and stare with hanging head at my boots until Brilla, after nearly an eternity, is returned to us, and my name is clearly called. "Don't give them anything," I hear Brilla hiss as I march like an unfeeling robot to the soldier at the door. The guard leads me through the door into some kind of a carpenter shop, which is set up as a temporary office. At a long table, sitting with his back to the door, is a massive being whose insignia indicates that he is a high-ranking officer. The guard shoves me in front of him. In military form, I salute him with my hand on the corner of my cap, and notice how the man across from me studies me critically. Bored, he thanks me for the salute and leans back comfortably in his chair, while one of the 4 men in the room serves him a cup of heavenly-smelling coffee and a plate with bread and corned beef. Exerting all of the control at my disposal, I force my eyes from the splendours before me, which I assume are there to tempt me. I observe immediately his suddenly wide-awake look and wonder what his purpose is. Disappointed, he reaches for his cigarettes, throws one leg across another, and turns to me in exaggerated friendliness. "Since July 20th, the Nazi salute has been required in the German army. Why is it that you salute me with the old military salute?" "My tactfulness forbids me from using this salute of honour on an enemy officer," I answer with a firm voice. "So?" He acts surprised. "Then you possess more tact than your Minister of Foreign Affairs, von Ribbentrop. Do you know that during one of his visits to the English king, he greeted him with Heil Hitler?" "I am not aware of that," I give indifferently in response. It is the truth. He underscores his words and reaches for the coffee cup. "How long have you gone without anything to eat?" He turns to me and continues the conversation. "For 2 days," I explain shortly. "Oh, then you must be terribly hungry. We will hurry so that we can get you something good to eat," he says to me in a concerned manner. I am not going to fall for that, I say to myself, although a terrible feeling of hunger rages in my insides. But the voice of the officer interrupts my thoughts. "Your unit, please?" he asks and reaches for paper and a pen. "Here is my sold book, mister." I answer calmly and finger my sold book out of my wallet. Curiously, he leafs through the pages and gives it back to me. "How is it that you have just now been captured? Your division was destroyed long ago," he asks. "I was in a hospital," I explain to him. "So that's why," he indicates, satisfied. "But after that, you were in a rocket launcher company. Where is it now?" "I was not in a rocket launching company," I return his assertion. "But this is a record of your troop strength and ammunition stock," he declares sharply, and holds an old roster in front of my eyes that was in my pack. "Naturally, that is from La Haye Depuis." I laugh at him. "Don't lie," he bellows angrily in response. "We have the means to make you talk. You can count on that. Here is my sold book. Everything that I know and that would be of interest to you is in it, mister. Otherwise, I do not have anything else to give you," I say to him with deliberate calmness. "I will give you the opportunity to consider it once again in quiet," he says, somewhat cooled, giving one of the men present the sign to take me away. Prepared for any meanness, I go in front of the guard out the door, where another receives me, leads me across the yard, and shoves me into an enclosed pigsty. The gate slams shut behind me. In the half-dark, I look at my new quarters and confirm to my satisfaction that the boars that were housed here before me were removed days ago, and because of the excessive heat, the straw is at least dry. Since it is impossible for me to stand up in the small stall, I shovel some straw into a corner and sink down upon it. It's too bad that I don't have any matches with me in order to smoke one of the few cigarettes that I still possess. What did the American officer mean with his crazy talk about rocket launchers? I only saw those weapons in action once in Russia. That was on October 2nd, 1941, near Vyazma. Damn it, those were the days. Squeaking, the door to the pigsty opens and bright sunshine floods my dungeon. From the perspective of a frog, I see the brown leggings covering the shoes and olive-green pants of an American. "Come out, you Nazi pig!" he calls in bended position into my quiet little chamber and grins from ear to ear. Dumb dog, I think, and slip outside. Blinded by the glaring light, I hold my hand for protection in front of my eyes, as the guard takes me by the arm and guides me to the officer. "Have you considered the situation?" he asks and looks at me cynically. "In connection with the matter, there is nothing to reconsider," I answer him honestly. "Shall I put matchsticks under your fingernails like the Gestapo does to the Jews?" he snaps threateningly. "That will not make a rocket launcher out of me. I did not have anything to do with it," I answer him obstinately. "What is this written by your own hand?" He holds the list under my nose once again and points with a pencil to the signature on the backside of my old ammunition report. "Mortar ammunition," I say dryly. "And here," he points to the end of the list. 996 mortar grenades, I read to him. "So," he laughs triumphantly and folds the list together. "They are rocket launchers, isn't that true?" "No, just mortar grenades. 8-centimeter mortar grenades, mister." I laugh in his face at the error. "Why didn't you say that at first?" He becomes angry and throws the pencil to the table. "You didn't ask me about it," I answer calmly. "Get this fellow out of my sight," he speaks German in a rage, puffing on a cigarette. Apparently happy about the failure of his superior, an older American, grey at the temples, turns to me and behind the back of the officer gives me a sign which seems to mean, "Let's leave the fool." I salute, turn on my heels and follow him. With the feeling that I have won a battle of wits against the officer and that I have avoided a medieval torture, I step to the side of the somehow sympathetic older soldier, out into the open and across the yard, where he puts me into a shed. To my great surprise, there are about 30 German soldiers there, including Hocker and Briller. A quick glimpse into the individual faces of the prisoners is enough to know that, unfortunately, I am not acquainted with any of the others. The shed does not have a door and is completely open in front, apparently having served the farmer as a coach house. As a consequence, 2 American soldiers stand several paces distant, observing us sharply and chewing with empty mouths in a manner that reminds me of cows ruminating in a meadow. "They are chewing gum," a non-commissioned officer explains to me in response to my question about why they are continually chewing. "What did they want from you, Helmut?" Hocker asks, concerned. "They thought I was the leader of a rocket launcher unit." "And that's why they locked you up in the pigsty?" Briller asks in amazement. "It wasn't that bad. If it doesn't get any worse, we can be satisfied," I answer him tranquilly. "Hopefully we will soon get something to eat, otherwise I'll die," Hocker mumbles to himself. "What time is it?" I ask, looking at the other Germans. "A while ago it was 3 p.m. according to the Americans' watch," the non-commissioned officer informs me. "Where are you from, comrade?" I ask. "From Neustadt," he sighs, depressed. "That is not too far distant from my home," I say lightly. "But unfortunately no longer can it be reached from here. The train has already departed," he indicates without humour, then continues. "We should have gone to the railroad station earlier, comrade. This morning they pulled me out of the arms of my girlfriend. The French must have betrayed me." "Where did they catch you?" I ask, interested. "Naturally in Soissons. I could have held out for a long time with this voluptuous prostitute. She had food in abundance, let me tell you." "Then it was about time that the Americans saved you. Otherwise you would have had to serve at her court of love for a long time." I tease him. "Not so long. We will be home by Christmas," he indicates, convinced. "Do you believe that Hitler will finally put into service his legendary secret weapon?" I ask hopefully. "Hitler and secret weapons don't make me laugh," he responds contemptuously. "No, the Americans will win the war and make us their 49th state. Then see how well we live. So that's it. I whistle through my teeth and turn away from him. My friends look at me with sad eyes. Don't let such idiots bother you, they whisper to me. It is unbelievable what kind of fools we have among us, I fluster back, shaking my head in disappointment. How about smoking? I ask my companions. Both shrug their shoulders. Why don't we try it? I say, taking out my cigarettes to offer them to my friends. Embarrassed, we ransack our pockets for matches while the guards watch. Regretfully, we display our empty hands to each other. Without interfering, one of the guards steps toward us, and in a friendly gesture holds a burning lighter to our cigarettes. With a deep drag, we pull the long-missed smoke into our lungs and nod our thanks to the foreign soldier, who acknowledges it as he returns to his position. There are both good and bad among them, I conclude. Those two seem to be in order. Hocker seems to read my thoughts. If they would just give us something to eat. Be a little patient, Willie. We will surely be fed soon. The interrogation officer knows that I have not had anything to eat for 2 days. I comfort Hocker while my own terrible hunger torments me. That is what I told him as well, he now laughs, causing me to lose faith. Did you tell that fellow that you belong to an alarm battalion? Briller asks, interested. No, I was ashamed to utter the name of this heap, and he did not ask at all. I answer softly. We simply lay down our sold books in front of him, and there was nothing entered in them. He already knew about our old division, and so he did not ask any questions about it, Briller explains to me. That's clear, I say. The outcome has been decided, and they are no longer interested. I add my commentary. In the meantime, rain clouds gather, and the first drops drizzle onto the hot stone pavement in the yard, causing steam to rise. The poplar trees standing nearby begin to sway in the increasing wind. Our guards are relieved. 2 others, covered in raincoats with small, rapid-fire weapons and ammunition belts, take the same places and stare at us, apparently in a bad mood. The soft hum of motors in the sky draws our attention. As the noise grows louder, our trained ears distinguish the familiar sound of the ME-109, which has been spread over all the battlefields of this war. Like a bolt of lightning out of the bright sky, it screams almost vertically out of a cloud bank, firing tracer ammunition into an American fighter plane below it. The American pilot guides the badly wounded metal bird upward as a black, ever-increasing stream of smoke pours out of the plane's engine. The ME-109 rushes over the farm at a low altitude and disappears in an elegant turn before the enemy anti-aircraft guns can fire at it. At the same time, as the American machine climbs toward the sky, a dark bundle falls toward Earth until a white parachute unfolds and gently brings the pilot back to Earth. The plane, now free of its pilot, wavers drunkenly in the sky for a few seconds, and then, as though smashed by a gigantic fist, explodes in a mighty ball of flame and is scattered by the winds. We look with happy eyes at each other. Once again we are permitted to see war as we have known it. Only slowly does the awkwardness of our own situation return to our consciousness. Instinctively, I feel the eyes of the American guard resting on me and turn around, looking up at him. A faint smile can be seen in his face, and the wink of his eye indicates his recognition of the German pilot. These guys are fair, Hocker whispers to Briller and me. I would like to know that for sure, I say, and dig out my cigarettes. Once again we squeeze the cigarettes between our lips and look inquiringly toward the Americans. A sergeant pushes his way to us on the outer edge of the shed, from whose roof the rainwater trickles out in silvery drops from the leaky rain gutters. He tries to give us a light with his wet matches. The guards follow his vain attempts with interest. Finally, when they make themselves understood, one of them steps toward us and holds his burning lighter to our cigarettes. No good German matches, the sergeant babbles trustingly, but the American merely shrugs his shoulders and returns to his place. You old fool, I hiss angrily at him. For your entire life you have lit fires with German matches, and suddenly now, in the eyes of the Americans, they are no good. Do you believe you can improve your own circumstances with this stupid prattle? I am convinced that every clear-thinking opponent has nothing but contempt for one who soils his own nest. What would you have thought of a Russian prisoner in a similar situation who chattered about his matches, which functioned fine in dry conditions, and which he used just a short time before to light a cigarette while standing behind his machine gun to defend his land. Once again I turn in disgust away from this characterless scamp, who, without a word of response to my accusations, slips back into the dark shed and mixes with the other Germans. We will have a lot of trouble in the future with our dear comrades if they continue to act this way. I bow my face in shame. I would have liked to bust him in the nose, but we cannot show the Americans such conduct if they are to have any respect for us. Hocker cracks, just as angry. We must hold out and watch out for ourselves. Otherwise we will sink in our grief. Briller calms us with a warning, just as the noise of a truck's engine in the back of the yard drowns out his last words. Now, for sure, there will be something for us to eat, Hocker suggests, and all the men behind us become unruly like cows in a stall that can smell their feed. Only 2 men at a time, a tall American calls, standing on the tailgate of the truck, holding up 2 fingers. The truck is completely empty, and the bed is freshly washed. Go ahead, the tall American indicates as we hesitate in front of the empty vehicle and look to Briller. Quickly we grab onto the sides and climb up, and Briller as the next follows. Happy to be together, we forget our disappointment and are already curious about where they will take us. Certainly there we will get something to eat since it is at least 6 p.m. In no time, the truck is completely occupied by German soldiers. The last to get on are 3 SS men with badly torn uniforms and swollen faces. The Americans chase them angrily back into the shed and slam the tailgate of the truck closed with one hand. 3 powerful Americans armed with pistols make their way through the crowd and climb onto the truck. Slowly the vehicle begins to move with its sorrowful freight, reaches the main road in a few minutes, and starts to roll westward with accelerating speed. After about 30 minutes travel time, we see 5 American tanks encircled on the other side of the road close to the edge of a nearby wood. In the middle of the circle, we recognize about 300 Germans crouching on the ground. Slowly our vehicle turns onto a field road and rumbles toward the tanks. Our captured comrades look at us curiously as the truck stops and we are told to get out. Line up in 2 rows, we are ordered by an excited and unbelievably fat American whose shape brings us to laughter. Macht schnell, he screams angrily as he notices that we have very little respect for him. That fellow has eaten way too much for us to take him seriously. I chuckle in high spirits to those around me, and they in turn break out in laughter. We quickly form in 2 rows, in the firm hope that we will finally get something to eat. Once again the 3 of us stand in the front row and look for provisions, but none are to be seen. Instead, 2 Americans without weapons stand 3 steps away from us, and upon a signal from the fat one begin going through our pockets. Afterward, we are driven through a line of cynically grinning Americans, where a couple of US soldiers, armed with red lacquered clubs, urge us to sit down. Don't they give you anything to eat here? Is my first question to the unknown fellow sufferers next to me. No, only the club if you don't make yourself small and ugly, an older corporal answers. That can be bad for us, Hocker indicates, sad and downbeaten. Do you know when we will be sent on? I ask the corporal. Not today for sure, he answers, resigned to his fate and lying on his back in the wet grass. Luckily the rain has stopped. We smoke without speaking. How long will we still have some? I will make an inventory. I interrupt my friends, lost in their gloomy thoughts, and lay out the rest of my possessions between my widespread legs. A letter case with diary, 4 small photographs of my wife and me in Strasbourg, a list of my belongings in our apartment at home, the marching orders from Paris to Le Bourget, a telegram from my wife in which she reports the bomb damage our apartment had suffered, my soldbuck, a handkerchief, a full peignoir and a pencil stump, 31 German cigarettes, the wedding ring on my finger, my shaving kit with a razor and 20 blades, a half-used bar of soap, shaving brush, a can of shaving cream, and a little bottle of aftershave lotion. You came away very good, the corporal indicates as I shove my riches back into my bag. It's not the end yet, Briller throws in. How many cigarettes do we have together? I ask my friends, reporting my 31 cigarettes. I have 23, Briller announces. And I have 44, Hocker laughs proudly. Then together we have 98 cigarettes, I conclude. The corporal shall receive 8 of them so that he can also smoke, I note, handing him 5, to which Hocker also adds another 5, so that he has 10. The good Hocker laughs generously. Many thanks, the man says, suppressing a little emotion. Gradually the night descends upon us. Only the glowing points on the tanks indicate the location of the Americans. Before I starve to death here, I'm going to take off, Hocker whispers with a determined expression. We would not get past the tanks alive, Willie. I try to talk him out of his insane intention. Impossible, Briller agrees with me, and as proof a tank machine gun peppers its tracer ammunition into the woods. At least let us sleep in peace, you gangster, a man bellows out of the middle of our group, upset about the noise of the machine guns. We are hungry, someone suddenly yells courageously. Whoever mutinies will be shot, an American responds in a powerful voice from where the tanks are located, causing a brooding silence to lie over the captive soldiers. Overcome with fatigue and weak from hunger, we fall into a restless sleep on the cold, wet earth.